Welcome to the Forward Thinking Podcast. It's Chrissy here from CS2. Today we have our guest, Rick Collins. He's the Senior Director of Marketing Ops at ConnectWise. Rick is joining us to talk about an important topic, I think, for many folks in marketing ops as you're in startups or growing businesses, but really how you can build out and mature your marketing ops team as the company grows and even goes through change, whether that growth is through kind of natural growth with adding on to the company or even through acquisitions and so forth. So, decided to actually, Rick, you volunteered to be on the podcast as we did a call for speakers, which I love. So I know you're a listener, and but yeah, welcome to the podcast, Rick.
No, thank you. Excited to be on here. I've listened for a long time on my runs, so it would be weird. Here, it is a little weird hearing your voice at regular speed, and not because I listen to my podcasts sped up. So normal voice and speed for me.
Yeah, I feel like people probably need to speed up my voice. So I feel like that's a top tip for everyone who wants to. Charlie, the other half of CS2, he does it all the time. He's like, I can't believe you're listening to something at normal speed right now.
Yeah, it's fairly common these days, right?
Cool. Well, to kick it off, I know you probably know this, but we always ask folks like kind of what's their origin story to get to where they are today, especially in MOPS, because we all have very similar stories of how we like maybe stumbled into it, but what also kept us going down that path and what appealed to us. So would love for you to just give us a quick recap for our listeners of how you got into MOPS.
Okay, yeah, happy to do so. I kind of came from an IT background, even though that wasn't really where I saw myself going down that path. In college, I was a international business and Spanish major. Kind of had dreams of working for a multinational company, traveling to Latin America, doing something in business, but certainly not marketing. Did not have any interest in marketing or anything related to it. Felt like advertising is what marketing was to me.
Yeah.
And just kind of by chance after college was looking to try to start something, couldn't really find much, and got into QA at a telecom company, Quest at the time. I think they're CenturyLink now, but got really kind of deep into QA testing and involved in a lot of aspects of IT. Didn't love it. It was too too rigid. I didn't have enough interaction with people. So I felt like, even though I was learning a ton, really kind of wanted to see where I could go from there, and ended up at a software company from there. Did a lot of things for that software company, in software training. Did a lot of system implementations. Worked both on the software side and really kind of a liaison with the hardware. But a lot of kind of the core of my career has been being a bridge between the business and the technical. Either between end users or internal customers who represent the business side of the house, and then being able to talk both languages and really kind of being that bridge between the two. I really kind of honed that muscle a little bit more at that software company, both with our external customers as well as with the sales team. Got kind of heavily involved with the sales team, and then kind of transitioned into nonprofit a little bit. I led IT at United Way in Columbus, originally from Columbus, Ohio, in Tampa now. But part of that was I was really hired there to implement relationship management, both from a people, process, and technology side of things into United Way. It was kind of a national initiative. And so it certainly involved a lot of process work, a lot of cultural work, change management, but heavily involved in transitioning United Way from a transactional based fundraising model to a more relationship based transactional model with digital at the core of everything we did. And so it was a heavy involvement of really kind of exercising that digital engine and building that out at ConnectWise at United Way back then, and really started to get a view into marketing operations, even though we didn't call it that, and really digital marketing. Implemented Salesforce, part of a national model across all of United Ways that I was involved with, of really kind of looking at that, actually, one of the roles in the group that we were working in was called a director of marketing operations, and I remember seeing that, saying, "Huh, marketing operations, what is that? That kind of sounds cool." And lo and behold, wife wants to move to Florida. She's just after me every winter. Why do we live in Ohio? It's too cold. And I finally kind of was like, maybe it's time, and found a role at ConnectWise that wasn't called marketing operations. I don't think ConnectWise, and I certainly didn't really know what marketing operations was. Um, but it was really to manage the tech stack. I think the original scope was we need somebody to come in here and really move us forward
Yeah.
with our tech stack, set a vision, and really get us down building out a lead scoring model. Those were, I think, the two
Oh, okay.
kind of initial aspects of it.
What was the title?
I was senior marketing systems analyst.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Uh,
interesting.
it was very interesting, and I remember when I talked to our head of marketing through the interview process, it was funny to listen to him articulate what he was looking for.
Mhm.
This was 2016, I guess, during the interview process,
Mhm.
2017, right in that range.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like, we're kind of looking for a technical person, but a business minded person, somebody that can bridge the gap. We kind of need a unicorn.
Yeah.
And it was before unicorn was like this common phrase. And I think a lot of marketing ops people are known as unicorns.
Yeah.
So it's just funny thinking back how far both marketing operations has come, as well as even ConnectWise, and how we've matured in our thinking from that as well.
Totally. That's really interesting because that's like a I think if you connect it to like the way that you're describing yourself even early on, like of IT, but what you're trying to get to is like trying to be at the center of like people and process and data, but looking for something where you can work like actually work with people and like be cross functional, um and then obviously your hiring manager saying like we need someone who can do that but also be business minded. I think that's really at a core like what marketing ops is, and or a marketing ops person that can like really thrive is like, yes, we're building out process and we're at the center of like a lot of technical work and data, but in order to really create a roadmap that makes sense, or really like understand where to prioritize initiatives, like you have to really be thinking about the business. So it is a little bit of a unicorn to find.
Yeah, definitely right.
But I think the skills can be kind of learned there, or like if you, I think
Hmm.
also for folks who maybe aren't like super super technical but still like problem solving, I think they might even lean into the business side because some people just really love business. That's something that I was technical, but at a core, I just like love figuring out how businesses work and how to make them better.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Um,
No, that's great. It's I think a lot of it. I always, when I'm interviewing people, I always phrase this natural curiosity,
mhm.
and like the willingness to, or having a question and trying to dig into the answer behind that question. And oftentimes that could, it can be people, it can be process, it also can be technical, where you have to dig into the systems and figure it out. And so I think that always seems to be a common theme or trait that at least the people I've dealt with in the marketing operations space have, for those that are successful.
Cool. Yeah, totally. 100% agree. Well, we'll get into the meat of our questions. I think um, we're really talking about building out and maturing a marketing ops team as the company grows. And um, we were talking about this before, but you've had like kind of like long stints being at companies, and most recently at ConnectWise, you've been there like 5 years or so, just like
Mhm.
over 5 years, and have probably seen that company go through a lot of change. And um, but for yourself, when you took that role and at ConnectWise, like how large was the company? Were you guys still kind of early stage? Was it like an already kind of advanced company at the time? Like what was it like had been around but operating like a small startup? What was the kind of environment like?
Yeah, we were probably, I think when I joined, maybe 600, 700 people. I want to say we were like in the 175 to $200 million ARR. So we were actually fairly large. in comparison to a startup.
Yeah.
Um, but we weren't operationally mature. I think there were a lot of operational aspects that we were lacking, and we were still growing. We were a fast growing company. We were growing 20-25% year over year.
Mm.
Um, but we how we got there was not as natural maybe, or as operationally sound as I think we would want to run, and as you see a lot of companies run today. But we were still fairly large. We just didn't have anything formal from a marketing operations perspective. We had a lot of things were under digital marketing,
Mm.
a lot of things that you would normally see under marketing operations. But there were a lot of aspects that we didn't need. We had a lot of homegrown systems, homegrown
Mm.
lead management system, a homegrown CRM system, so all this custom development that IT would do. Uh, that, but then we didn't have kind of that formal. Hey, we need to build out a roadmap for marketing operations. We need to build out I don't know, an attribution model.
Mm-hmm.
Connect things into Salesforce or whatnot. Because we had all these homegrown systems, I think it kind of led us down that path.
Mm. Having come into that and or seeing the company not really like maybe mature the marketing ops function as much early on, like what do you feel like is some of your advice maybe for some companies who are a bit early on or like early stage kind of companies, series A, B, C? um
Mhm.
like what do you suggest for as far as like their investment in mops? Like do you feel like it's maybe a time to kind of set the foundation early on? Have you seen that that would have been useful as the company would have grown, maybe been like less technical debt to kind of take care of later?
100%. The amount of technical debt we still have to deal with is it's crazy. Just one example is data. The amount of data we
Mm,
have from accounts and contacts, and not addressing that early on,
mm,
and the amount of work that it has taken us to try to overcome that, both in just invalid accounts that are not truly sales addressable and
mm,
not within our what our target market would be, let alone duplicates and all the other issues that come along with that.
mhm,
The having that strong kind of operational foundation early on is truly important for growth, because what has happened for us, I can say from experience, is we've acquired a lot of companies
mm,
as a part of our growth as well. And when you're acquiring companies, you're bringing their data along with yours. You're bringing their systems into yours, and if you don't take the time, if you're not already kind of pretty well operationally sound, if you have a nice data structure, you have your systems really well mapped out, and then bring in another piece of that, a bunch of systems and a bunch of data, trying to push all that together and do it quickly enough to satisfy all of the stakeholders, it's really challenging and it
yeah,
really slows you down. And I think what we really learned through this process is we rushed a lot of that work, and then it took us months, even a year plus, to try to get out of some of that technical debt that we had.
totally. Yeah, I think that's really important because I think especially when it comes to data, like you said, or just some foundational things like, I mean, really when it comes down to it, a lot of what we're doing in ops is, managing data and databases and then the process that
Yeah.
can support that data in order to use it to be effective. And then the people that touch that data or the systems that touch it. So having that strong kind of I would say like methodology or framework around how you're
Hmm.
maintaining, how it's being updated, how people are using it, who has like that governance is super important because yeah, I have been in organizations or at least even seen like I think I've had both accounts like we were talking about with the acquisitions. I've had an account where
Hmm.
when I was lucky enough to have been in a company, got them to a place where they had a strong structure. So it was a very easy lift to say like with that company, okay, let's just take on their structure and let's just mold ours
Yeah.
into theirs, and it made it simple. But I also see sometimes across our clients when they're like coming to us with some of these issues of like, okay, there was no structure, and instead of
Mm.
the company that's doing the acquisition, they're almost looking at the company that they acquired as a example of what a better operations looked like, and they almost want to just like go into their systems
Can we
instead.
take theirs?
Yeah, like,
Yeah,
can we
right,
use
right.
their Marketo, or can we use it? And it's like, well,
Absolutely.
yeah. And so you don't want to be in that place where you're just like, oh, like taking something that maybe was structurally sound, and what happens is that you see them be very disparate for a very long time as they're
Hmm.
figuring out how to join them together.
Definitely, and not to go too far on the acquisition piece, but you know, typically, at least for us, we're owned by private equity. There's a thesis statement tied to that acquisition, and so there's a time to like hit the growth goals, integrate the
Mm,
sales teams, and all that. But all of the systems behind that, all of the data behind that is really, it's a challenging process. And so trying to take certain motions, certain models that a lot of the acquired companies have, even if they're better, it's a challenging piece to try to merge in.
yeah. And
Um,
I'm sure
so
their M&A consultants are not saying, hey, what's your marketing operations, or what's your operations like?
no, definitely not. That is not a part of the qualification standards.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree though around early stage. Like, I think not going too much, but at least what you can to set a structure and hire early on, the better.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what I probably didn't mention too is I think a lot of times the first role that a marketing operations role that someone an early stage company can hire, a lot of times they're asking them to be both strategic and executional, right? Be able to
Mm,
do both,
hmm.
but then they throw so much at them
Yeah.
that I think that can be a big risk. And we talk a lot about that in different podcasts and
Hmm.
marketing operations webinars and whatnot. Of you can't ask for somebody to run your paid media, run your attribution model, build out a tech stack, send your email, build an email strategy, to, like be your data reporting
Data,
analyst,
yep.
write SQL. Like you want all these things. One person do it all,
Manage your
and
website.
yeah, do it right, right. Everything related to this. This is one person doing it, and so
Hmm.
really trying to. You definitely want someone who can lay the strategic foundation and cast that vision for a roadmap of where you're going. But I think you have to prepare. They can probably do some of the execution piece, um, but you can't throw everything at them. You're going to have to build out a team, truly a team behind that.
Totally. And I think that person, like you said, if they are business minded and they're focusing on it, they'll understand like where to maybe go with those
Yeah,
hires, like what they know will be need a dedicated person. That kind of leads into
yeah.
the next topic I wanted to cover is like maybe what are some of the challenges you see with building out a MOPS team as the company matures,
Mhm.
or like do you think there are any things that like some orgs do wrong? You kind of alluded to it already, like they don't hire enough, but when it comes to building a MOPS team, like, do you think, have you learned anything, or do you see other orgs maybe doing something wrong, or even before getting to ConnectWise, did you see like a disconnect in how the team was being built?
Yeah, I think there's probably two things. Usually, it's understaffing. I think is probably the most common
Yeah.
thing where we underestimate the proverbial we, right. We
Yeah.
underestimate how much it's going to take to actually execute on the goals and the strategy that we're trying to implement. And so I think we look at it. Oh, that should be really easy. We have these state of the art systems and we're just going to introduce a ton of tech and that tech's going to run on its own because the sales rep told me it was going to run on its own. And so let's do this world class. We're going to put $1 million into our tech stack and that's going to fuel the growth of this team, and we can have two people monitor all that. And I would say I learned very quickly the amount of resources it takes to manage a large tech stack, even a small tech stack, but a
Yeah.
large tech stack. It is really challenging. It is hard to do well and to be efficient, and it takes people.
Totally.
I know you've mentioned it many times on your podcast. You've had guests mention it as well, but it really takes people to execute on that. It's not something that just runs in the background. So I think that's certainly an aspect of it of trying to make sure that you properly resource. And it think it gets tricky too, depending on how big your marketing team is,
Yeah.
and how many products you're selling. If you're a one product company, it's a little bit simpler. And not to say that if you only have one product, it's simple, but um, your messaging is a little more
Hmm.
straightforward. You might be dealing with the same persona the whole time. You probably have maybe a simple sales team structure. The moment you start to expand that out into having multiple product lines, potentially multiple websites, multiple sales teams that you're supporting, it really starts to get tricky to try to weave all of that together that might have different models and different strategies associated with them.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. I also think we're coming up against that too with just supporting multiple go to market strategies.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
because now it's, companies are wanting to do all of it. They want like their inbound model,
Yeah.
they want ABM slash outbound model, they also are maybe exploring PLG. And then they're
Yep.
expecting like, okay, the same, and they might build out marketers to support that, but then those same
Sure.
marketers are going to the same group of marketing ops folks that are also trying to support it. And so, like, which marketing ops should be at the center of that. That team should be at
Hmm.
the center because they can really guide the company on how to actually operationalize like multiple go to market strategies at once, the data structure you need, the process, um, even how to report on them effectively. But it's just,
Yeah.
there's, like you said, the understaffing part. It's just, it's not getting the resources it needs. So I totally
Hmm.
agree. Like, not only, business types, but anything that you're trying to scale out from a marketing side, like needs to then get the support on the marketing ops side. Otherwise, it's just going to be slow, stalled. There's going to be
Yes.
mistakes. Like there's going to be people complaining they can't get their campaigns out the door. And
Right.
then it kind of looks bad on marketing ops when really it's not their fault.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I think you're spot on with kind of multiple go-to-market strategies.
Hmm.
I mean, at ConnectWise, we probably, I don't know, 17 products, 16 products,
Wow.
something like lines that we sell. So we have a lot of different products. One of them is more of a PLG model, and it's a digital motion. You try and you buy, and there's all kinds of usage-based data associated with it.
Yeah.
There's models, but it might as well be a separate company.
Hmm.
And the way that we have to operate from a marketing ops perspective, from the motion that we go with that, how we have to set things up in Marketo for that. We have a separate lead scoring model. We have a separate framework for it, and we're a shared service, right? I think most marketing operations teams are shared services, so
Yeah.
it's really tricky when you have multiple teams and multiple marketers trying to utilize that shared service.
Yeah, totally. One thing you mentioned too was around the supporting the tech stack, and I think almost the name automation and like even market automation has done us a
Yeah,
disservice then because everyone's like, oh, well, it just kind of operates on its own. It's like, well, you can scale out things a certain way. You can automate some
right.
processes, but it still requires an owner. It still requires like a lot of work. And if anything, we always say a tech stack that you add on to it, it has an exponential effect. It's not just like, oh, you
Definitely.
add on some, you need maybe a bit more resources, the same as the other one. It's like you almost need that
Yeah.
plus more because it just adds on more and more complexities to keep that maintained. And so I think now marketing ops teams or companies are starting to realize, okay, let's maybe simplify, but also let's maybe be a bit more structured in how we dedicate our resources to certain parts of supporting the team. So that's actually what I wanted to talk about next was um, how do you suggest or have you seen work well, maybe even at ConnectWise, as far as like when you do have more hires and resources, like splitting out the roles and responsibilities across the team as you bring more people on board,
Mhm.
um, or like you said, supporting like multiple products like that.
Yeah, at least at ConnectWise, the way we've really thought about it is what are always tying back to the strategy, right? What are our business goals for the year? What are we trying to accomplish? What is it going to take for us to hit those goals from an operational perspective? And the way we're structured, I kind of have us in four pillars is what I kind of look at our teams as. Is we have marketing automation and execution. I look at it from that perspective. I separate marketing automation from email. For email strategy and email execution, I put marketing automation, even though they're both using Marketo,
Yeah.
because it's so different. It's the
Mm-hmm.
operational aspect of marketing automation, and we use Marketo. So everything that goes along with running Marketo non-email, um, and then we have our email, and we uh, have a role for kind of the strategy, but then we outsource the execution on it,
Mm.
which is a kind of a common model I think that we do within ConnectWise. Is we have roles at headcount across our marketing team for the strategy side of it, but a lot of the execution we go through an agency or an execution
Mm.
team to do that. Then the data side of things is the next piece that we've really focused on. We started out as a shared service, meaning we used kind of the IT or operations shared data services team.
Mm.
What happened, and I think what happened a lot of times with companies that are growing, is the appetite for data and analytics and understanding what is happening by your head of demand gen, your CMO, your CRO. Everybody wants to know and go really deep, and you deliver one report. It's like, oh, this is great. I've been asking for this for a long time. Now I need this, and now I need this, and so it just continues to grow. And so we felt like it was really important to have a dedicated data and analytics team that could build out and respond quickly, both from an analysis perspective as well as kind of a formal dashboard perspective. And then the last piece is the tech stack that we talked about, and um, really kind of how do you manage that well, not just as an administrator, because that's part of it, but how do we uh, integrate everything properly? How do we make sure that we are being proactive and not reactive to errors and to issues? And I think that's really probably the risk that we and one of the learning lessons we had is we integrated a ton of tech and we're like, all right, great, it worked. And now let's move on to the next thing. And then all of a sudden there's all these errors happening and
Yeah.
leads aren't getting routed properly, or our speed to lead is not hitting our goals. So
Mm-hmm.
our conversion rates are dropping, and we're just reacting and plugging holes
Mm.
in the dam as opposed to getting in front of it and making sure we're fixing the core of everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I like the way that you talked about those different kind of like teams and structures. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of how we structure our team at CS2 a little bit, actually,
Mm-hmm.
because we have like our directors, our senior directors, I also have managers that support kind of the road mapping and even some of the normal kind of what you call like the marketing automation, but just actual, strategy for like life cycle and then even building that out on some of their regular systems or some of the tool management. But then we also have specialized teams that, like you said, it is a bit different. So campaign operations or execution is kind of managed by another team. We don't do a ton of that at CS2, but we know that wouldn't be smart to have the same kind of person doing that. And then we have our
Mm-hmm.
data and analytics as well as like our Salesforce administration on another team. And because they can be even more specialized and go deeper into
Yeah.
that and support some of those frameworks. So um, I think that's a good structure for some folks who are building out their team. And within the true marketing ops side, you can even specialize those groups of people
Yeah, for
to
sure.
like to different internal customers. So like someone who may be on more on the sales side, SDR side,
Mm-hmm.
supporting them. Someone more for like customer marketing and then someone for like demand gen. There's different ways you can go about it that I've also used in the past when I worked in house, but
Mm-hmm.
having people be like I think as focused as possible without diminishing their role to a small piece, but still working cross functioning with each other, I think works really well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. That being able to really have the right connection to each other, and that they are working cross functionally, but they do have kind of their specialized areas and focuses, and it's worked well so far. I think we've been more reactive in the sense of uh, I see this being an area of concern, we do not have enough data analysts to respond to the demand that we have. So either we need to outsource and start to build out some agencies that can deliver on this, or we need to bring somebody in, an additional head in house to do this. And so I've had a ton of support from our former head of marketing, but and our most recent, our new CMO. She's not really new anymore. She's almost over a year now. But I've had a ton of support from our leaders that has really helped scale our team and build us out to execute on the goals that we have as a company.
Totally. I like the looking at other resources to fill the gaps. Since you've been at ConnectWise and like doing some of the hiring yourself, like how have you found that experience be? Because I know we talk about it a lot on podcasts, but it's a bit of a tricky time, especially now for everyone with hiring, but especially in marketing ops, where this is a kind of a function role that people, kind of fall into. So it feels a lot like the pool is quite smaller when you do find someone. Everyone's kind of experience of like how they work in mops is quite different, so you do have to really kind of nail the interview and try and pair their expertise with what you're looking for. But how's that been for you?
So it's interesting. Before I almost look at it as before COVID, after COVID. We were very Tampa centric before COVID. Our
Mm.
headquarters is in Tampa, Florida, and so our hiring pool was kind of smaller. So you think of marketing ops as a hard role to fill. Now just go in one city, like
Oh
you're
wow,
just in this, and
yeah.
yeah, it's not easy. And so we were, for the most part, just, hey, if you're in Tampa, great, we'll look for you. But otherwise, sorry, we're not a remote company, which sounds crazy now. Like looking back, like how in the world did this work? Post COVID, it is completely flipped, and it wasn't just COVID. I think the world has changed, of course, but through some acquisitions, we acquired a company of equal size to us
Mm.
that wasn't in Tampa, and so they were spread across the world, and I think that accelerated our transition to kind of this remote workforce. But before, it was really really hard to just
Mm-hmm.
find somebody that was in our area. And even after, I think it is, what you mentioned, the talent pool. There are some really talented people, but the comp that they are demanding these days is high. And
Mm-hmm.
really having to go back to leadership, like, hey guys, I don't think we have this right. What we're trying to pay here, it's not where the market is.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to be really smart and think through that. And then two, I mean, it took me 5 months to hire a marketing data analyst. I listed it in December. Finally, he's just started 2 weeks ago. I must have made 6 offers, and every time got countered. And I was going above budget. Like I was doing everything I could, and it was just everybody had multiple offers. And these are remote people, right? They're not in Tampa. It wasn't like I had a small pool.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tricky.
So yeah.
I think what I tried to do was really uh, in my, both in the job description, but really in my first interview with our candidates, is describe, here's my vision, here's what I'm hoping you can fill, here's the pain point we have, here's the areas that we really need to solve,
Mm-hmm.
to try to help scope and tie their skill set. Oh yeah, that sounds exactly like what I'm looking for, or it's a little bit different than how I read this, marketing operations manager job description, which can mean a billion things. So I tried to really kind of fill that more organically in my conversations, but it was definitely challenging building out the team, and I know others have experienced that as well.
Yeah. The comp thing is interesting too, because I do think that uh, things have just changed like 100%. I
Yeah,
looked back at some roles that, and we're all, the amount of like raises we do to keep up with that, because we want, like, obviously we want to stay in par and be above that and pay everyone fairly, especially being a remote team. But it can be even something you address like yearly now. Like it has to be like
yeah,
something that you're always like constantly readjusting, because this is like a resource and they know they can go out and maybe find that too. But I think internally for customers, like their executive team needs to realize, like, this is something that we need to put budget against. But I think
hmm
the counter to that too is what some companies do as well is they're like, okay, well, we'll pay them that much, but then they really stall to hire anymore because they're like, well, that was a really expensive hire. I don't want to do another one. So since this person
Right.
is like demanding all this money and they're good at their job, I guess they can just take it all on, you know? And then they were
Yeah,
like,
let's give them more now, right?
yeah, just give them more. And expectations are high. And then that person maybe just really struggles in the role and leaves. So I think it's just going to be an education point, I think. And it got a bit crazy, I think, I think you said COVID, and I think you're right, though, with COVID, because a lot of folks who maybe even delayed on being kind of not but investing on the digital side just realize
Hmm.
how important all of that is when some of the other kind of channels that they leaned on before maybe didn't have such a digital operational lift. It was more like, okay, let's
Yeah.
run this event, our field marketers have it, like upload the leads and then follow up on them. Now it's more like, optimizing other core areas and getting the insights into like, digital ads, or what can we do to improve the customer experience? How do we do more outbound in a way that feels very ineffective now because that's not how buyers buy.
Right.
um, so there is this frenzy, I think. But and also I think people have realized how important MOPS is, which I think is good. It's part of the reason why we started the
Yeah.
podcast. So it's just kind of
Yeah.
matching to that.
It does feel like there's a lot more advocates for MOPS these days, and I think um, uh, COVID probably did kind of highlight like the need for execution, the need for strong digital strategy, and I, I think that and then the growth, right, the explosion of the Martech world and the failed promises of like just download, you just need this ABM platform and it'll run itself, and you guys will grow 10x, and
Yeah.
then people do it and they're like, yeah, let's do it. Like, oh wait, I think I need a person here. Who's going to run this? I think that is people have learned the hard way, and I can put myself in that category. We really overestimated um, the automation of technology versus how much people would need to run it.
Totally.
Yeah.
um so with seeing the team grow at your organization, I mean, we're focusing on MOPS, but like, how do you feel about um kind of the rise of like consolidation of ops teams? So like with RevOps and so forth. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that MOPS would serve well as a kind of a joint function like with sales ops? I'm not sure how that works at ConnectWise, so you can maybe give a little context, but or do you think like MOPS would be served better as like its own function, but just working closely with other ops teams? Like, what's your kind of stance?
So I'm going to give the typical marketing ops answer that it depends.
Yeah.
And I think it does. Not being cliched. I think it does depend. At ConnectWise, we are separate. We do have a CRO and a CMO, both report into our CEO. Not like that. It's not the CRO over the CMO or anything like that. And we have a separate sales ops and marketing ops function. Tight integration, tight connection, really good relationships there. I think that's one of the biggest things I try to do as a leader is to really have tight relationships across the company and make sure that I'm always serving those well so that we can rely on each other and pull on each other when we need. And then for us at ConnectWise, we have a business systems team that sits in IT, and there are Salesforce admins. So all of our Salesforce work is done through them, and it's like this kind of three-tiered approach where marketing ops, sales ops, and the business systems team work really closely together, have
Mm,
really tight relationships. I'd say for us, it works well. And here, the risk, I think, if we were to form a revenue operations or team,
mm-hmm.
and marketing ops was under revenue ops, I think the risk that you run, and it's probably fairly common, is that sales will consume marketing ops, and marketing ops is serving sales. Sales is the loudest. They're creating the revenue, so of course they're going to be
Mm-hmm.
have the biggest need. And I think that's really the risk. That's probably why we've avoided it,
Yeah.
so that our CMO has a large list of goals and priorities for the year. And the moment we move marketing ops out of that, those become the hope would be that they don't become less of a priority. and that marketing ops would get pulled away. But I think that's the risk, and so we've not done it. That's not to say it wouldn't work. I know companies that do it and say they would never go back. Like, why would you ever have these separate? And if there's really tight alignment, I think it works fine, and I think we do have that. If I think where it really causes problems is if there's competing or the relationship's not strong, and now it's pointing fingers at each other, and
Yeah.
that's where things start to break down. Marketing's not doing this, sales isn't doing this, and everybody's mad at each other. Versus true alignment. And that's not to say like we've cracked the code and we have pure alignment and we're walking down the street skipping, holding hands or whatever, but
You're not?
there's no, I know it's shocking, right? We should be. Yeah, I need to work on that. But I do think it really depends. I think there's a lot of orgs that have done some really good stuff by doing that, by combining those, because there's
Yeah.
so much synergy that can come with it.
Yeah, I agree with you though. Like I do think like you said, is the priorities of the CMO with those get abandoned, and it's like, well, maybe not, but then also that MOPS team will then just end up dotted line to the CMO anyway. And
Yeah,
so it's like,
right.
well, you're working more closely with this person who actually technically isn't your boss or like manages your function, but yet they're your biggest customer, you're supporting all of their initiatives, and they have a better insight into all the work that you're doing and if you're hitting those objectives. So to me, it's like, might as well stay there. but
Yeah.
but the key thing is alignment. And sometimes I do think it's an overreaction to lack of alignment, but I actually think
Mhm.
the alignment issue is more at the leadership level. But that's kind of what I think.
No, that's a good.
Yeah.
It's a great point, because I think the tendency would be, well, let's just combine the teams and then it will be aligned. And alignment doesn't necessarily come from a reporting structure, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot more involved in that.
Yeah. What about like the website team or like people that manage the website?
Mhm.
Like how closely do they work with your team, and uh does it that sit under marketing?
Yeah, so we have a digital team, is what we call it,
Oh, okay, that's your
and
digital
so
team. Okay.
yeah, so digital represents the website and all of our paid
Mm.
media strategy. Everything we do from paid search, paid social, media, anything that we do from that side.
Mhm.
So I kind of look at it as our head of demand gen, our head of digital, and me as the head of ops. The three of us are really tightly aligned. I couldn't do what I do without them. I'd like to think they can't do what they do without me, and my team. Of course, it's not me. Um, and so I think that alignment is really important, and that's how we're structured. I think it's worked well. I know a lot of teams would have a website and under and even all of digital potentially under marketing ops. I think that can work. I don't think I think there's a lot of benefits with that, in ensuring kind of operational efficiency, everything from a technology perspective. For us, we've made it work so far.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just asking because like I do think that people will focus on RevOps and they'll put marketing ops under there, but then they still have like the web team that will
Yeah,
then sit under marketing. It's like, well, if anything, if there's teams that like actually need to be aligned and have a similar process, it's still that web team or digital team with marketing ops. So I also feel like you're then creating a lack of alignment on another side that's super important. So I was talking about this on a podcast that haven't been published yet, but I had that aha moment and I'm like, wow, like that just seems like a total miss to me because like marketing ops doesn't even have like similar projects or anything they're working on with sales ops. They just touch the same systems.
yeah,
They need to be aligned.
right,
But when you think about the customer experience, the web team, the forms they're touching, everything, that's marketing ops too. They need to be aligned. And so
yeah,
don't make that relationship even harder, like if anything,
right.
just make them closer working together. So, yeah, it just hit me the other day. I was like, wait, what about the website team or what about the web team or anything like that during RevOps?
No, very true. I think you're spot on, and we even played around there for, I think it was, so we were founder led. We were acquired by private equity back in 2019, and have really kind of been on a journey since then. We moved demand gen and field marketing under revenue, so they were no longer under marketing, but marketing ops still was under marketing, and the digital team was. But we ran into things like that where it was what about your corporate branding? What about things related to the website? There's so much that doesn't necessarily touch sales, but is really important. And our 100% of our efforts and resources can't be dedicated to creating demand.
Mm-hmm.
We'd like to think that it can, but there's a lot more there. And so that we're now not structured that way. We're now all structured under our CMO, but it is a tricky thing that ensuring that things are well aligned and working well together.
Yeah. Well, I know we're just almost at time or a little bit over, but I wanted to sneak in one final question. And I think as marketing ops teams are growing, they usually embark on some similar types of projects or identify, okay, our company's maturing, so this is a super important thing to take on. For you and your org, and you maybe alluded to this a little bit on the reporting side, but what have been some examples of some initiatives or projects that have really surfaced as like, okay, we got this far, maybe not supporting or focusing on it, but now we really need to.
Yeah, I think there's two things that come to mind for me. Is the first is speed to lead. I know you've had some podcasts about speed to lead.
Yeah.
That the focus. So our conversion rates is one of our key metrics.
Mm.
We call it MQL to SQO, as we call it, sales qualified opportunity.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Um, but our conversion rates have not been over the past, like 2021. Our conversion rates were not where we wanted them to be, and it really started putting that focus on, speed to lead is such a important driver to that, and that is almost 100% on. It's two things, right? It's technology and it's the systems and the process that we get, but then it's also the human response of
Mm.
making sure the BDRs are, we call them BDRs, SDR,
Yeah.
whatever you call them,
Mm-hmm.
are responding quickly. So speed to lead was a huge focus for us. We put a ton of effort into error rates, reducing the number of lead routing error rates, and getting to the core of what was causing it. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of it was marketing automation, so Marketo data normalization changes and enrichment things we had to do.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a big project that we put a ton of effort behind. And it was it took a lot of focus and a lot of resources to try to get there to where our conversion rates are really trending in the right direction, and we've started to see kind of record growth rate in that
Oh,
area. I
nice.
think the second, yeah, it's been great. A lot of room to grow, so we're not there yet, but I think we're seeing positive momentum. The second area is one that I kind of shied away from, not because I didn't want to, but it was just one of those where nobody owned it. And I knew it was an issue for a long time, but I didn't really have the time or resources to dedicate to it. And it was really around our data quality and acquisition strategy.
Mm.
I think it's common for a company our size to, like, data is important. Data quality is important. We got to make sure data is good. The data is good, but then there's no true owner of it.
Mm.
And everybody it was the Spider-Man meme of both Spider-Man looking, pointing at each other. That's what I always felt like. Whose job is this? It's theirs. So I've taken that on. My team has taken that on. It's not me. My team does all the work. We actually built out a role for this because my CMO was really challenging. I think this is us. This needs to be us to own this. We had a ton of dupes through acquisition, trying to push everything together. We have a ton of unmarketable accounts and contacts in
Mm-hmm.
our systems,
Old
and
data.
really, yeah, old data,
Mm-hmm.
migrated data,
Yeah.
people that haven't consented, all kinds of stuff that are risks and red flags, but just no time. We have all these other projects. Who has time to worry about the data?
Right.
But then we're paying $300 per lead to acquire a new lead, and so we're paying all this money to bring in new leads when we've got a ton of accounts and
Mm-hmm.
uh, unmarketable accounts just sitting in our system that we can't do much with. And
Or
so
the rest of your
really putting,
projects rely on a data structure,
absolutely,
right?
oh, absolutely, they don't work because our data is not right. Well, our email is deliverability is
Yeah.
low,
Or how can you
or we're
route
not.
a lead to the right rep if you don't even have the right data in order to route it properly, right?
Exactly, right? I mean, everything,
Yeah.
everything at the core of that. So we put a really tight focus, dedicated ahead to it, have some offshore resources to help with some of the kind of manual investigation of things, and really started to put a plan together to how are we going to go through the 160,000 prospect accounts in our database, and truly clean this up really well, and become more of an engine of quality leads that are coming through.
Mm.
And ConnectWise is a little different in that we don't have a true. So we do account-based marketing. Not to say we don't, but our known TAM is not as easy. It's not a SIC code. It's not a NAICS code or whatever you call those. We work with IT service providers, which are often small, and so they don't always exist across all the different enrichment and the DMBs and the Zoom infos of the world. So we often will pull people in that are in our target market, but we can't just run it up against something and be 100% right that it's truly this in our market. So that's probably the second thing. I might be rambling a little bit, but
No, that
our
got
data acquisition strategy.
Yeah, a data acquisition strategy, and like I have another client who deals with it, and then that even means like, okay, how do we marry these different sources together to get exactly what we want? Because sometimes different business units require data that some providers don't have. So to say it takes some corralling is like an understatement, but dedicating the resources toward it, and that's why having that strategy early on, so it's like just chipping away rather than this huge undertaking. And that's the thing that I think is hard for MOPS now, is like tech debt remediation or data structure. Like I think big undertakings is the thing that like overwhelms the teams, and then it becomes a bit of a roadblock. So because they can't do that big undertaking, they just do enough and patching in order to move forward. But then you're just adding on to that problem. So so well, I know we're out of time now, but I thought this was a super awesome conversation, and I think all of these things are as marketing ops folks are seeing their team mature, their company mature, like really figuring out, okay, where do we invest our time? How am I dealing? And if anything, people probably are just listening and saying, "Oh, I'm going through the same thing as you, Rick."
I feel for them if they are. I really feel for them.
But where can folks find you, Rick, if they want to connect with you, and if they have any questions for you after listening to this?
LinkedIn, Rick Collins, work for ConnectWise. I think my moniker is like Martech Rick or something like that. But if you search for me, I know Rick Collins.
We'll share his LinkedIn profile in the description for everyone.
There you go. Yeah, and I'm fairly active on MoPros, the Microzo's little community there on Slack. So I typically go in there once a week or so and kind of see what's going on. And if I've experienced something, I'll reach out to people. Feel free to DM me on there if anybody's there. Happy to share any insights. And I've connected with some of your past speakers as well, and picking their brain on different topics.
Awesome.
Either one would be great.
That's cool. Yeah, I love these. I wish I had some of them when I worked in house. I would have.
Very helpful. Yeah. No, they are.
Awesome. Well, for those of you who are listening, enjoy this episode, feel free to write us a review or share with your colleagues and friends. And we'll see you next time. Forward thinking. Have a good one.